the focus session, which is Festival Forum, the next stage. I'm lucky enough to have some fantastic guests with me today, who include Cindy Castillo from Madcool Festival in Spain, Codruta Vulcu from ARTmania in Romania, John Giddings from the Isle of Wight Festival and Soul Agency, and Stefan Lehmkuhl from Goodlive, which organises a slew of festivals in Germany. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So it's 8 weeks since our first Festival Forum panel. They talked about refunds, voucher schemes, the long wait for government guidance, concerns over the supply chain, and there was a general consensus that nobody knew when the recovery would start. So that's all changed today, obviously. So the first question I was going to put to you was, by show of hands, did any of you cancel your events before the local authorities or government banned mass gatherings in your country?
No.
So you all waited for, Codruta.
Yeah, we cancelled practically because, for example, in Romania, not even at this point, we know for more than 2 weeks from now what's going to happen. I mean, everybody knows that's nothing going to happen, but there's no legal paper stating something like that. Yeah. At the beginning, we were really trying to get the clarification over the entire summer, what will happen with events over 5,000 people or even 3,000 people, but by this day, it's not clear. So it's regulated from every 2 weeks to every 14 days. But we cancelled, and everybody else cancelled, of course.
Yeah, I was going to say, was that something that you kind of policed yourselves through the Promoters Association, or was it one made the decision and everybody said, yeah, us too?
Well, we discussed at the level of the Promoters Association and also with the government what's the situation with the events in the summer, because as everybody knows, you can't really do a festival on a 2 weeks basis. So we came to the conclusion that it's not safe to do an event, that it's literally impossible. We had also discussions with the government who unofficially told us, well, there won't be any big festivals, but we will just wait every 14 days to let you know. So that practically within the Promoters Association, we decided it's the most responsible thing to do towards our audience, the artists, and the general health of the business, so to say.
Okay. So when you all cancelled, actually, Stefan, I'll ask you this. You've obviously got a number of festivals that you organise. So did you cancel them one by one, or did you make the decision to do it all at once?
Pretty much one by one, and we were waiting for the government guidance. I mean, at some point, we obviously knew they will all be cancelled, but for a number of reasons. We have festivals in June and July, and then two in September. So the September ones we cancelled a little later when they finally said that they will ban big events until late October in Germany. They said that quite early. So yeah, we canceled them one by one. And in the beginning, we were trying to postpone, like we were one of the few promoters, I think, that was naive enough to think, or optimistic enough to think, that we could probably do some shows late August and September. So we were getting ready to do like 3-4 festivals in a row, late August, September, until that was canceled, and then we all canceled it.
Okay. I wanted to ask you all actually what the cancellation decision meant for your team. Just how everybody dealt with that, how, John, I'll ask you first, how you kind of started to give people tasks to deal with, because morale must just go through the floor at that point, yeah?
Yeah, well, I think everybody could feel it coming. It was just a long time coming, and there was a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace because we weren't being given direction. But because it takes so long to set it all up, it became obvious at a point that it had to go. And you have to reassure people that going forwards, hopefully there's going to be a show next year and you're still going to employ them. But I feel for all the companies that you let down at short notice, the PA company, the lighting company, the staging company, and the hundreds of individuals that you hire on a part-time basis. It's really upsetting to have to tell people that.
Yeah, actually, but we'll come back to the supply chain in a while. But ticket refunds, how did everybody handle ticket refunds? Cindy? Oh, you're muted, I think. There
Now?
we go. Yes.
So, well, actually, our cancellation process for us has been very long and almost like a roller coaster because, as you can imagine, this hit us hard and we were not prepared as a society, which meant that things have been changing basically every week. So, actually, one of the most important things is that, for example, our government hasn't even declared force majeure yet for big events. So this has placed us in a very, very, very tricky and I would say situation, legal situation, not only with artists, contracts, providers, distributors, sponsors, but you know, with basically everything around the festival. So this has also complicated the process, the refund process, or reopening the refund process. So it was not till yesterday that we actually started it. And well, since we have only announced 70% of our lineup, and we're still missing like 3 headliners, 35 more bands, you know, I think I can't evaluate yet the impact that, or the real impact that this has had in this process because people are waiting for us to announce the second part. So I will be able to tell you a bit more about it in a month.
So at the moment then, people can hang on for their tickets next year.
Exactly.
But you think that they're waiting to see the full lineup before they decide?
Yes, we have offered 3 options, which are basically you can keep your ticket and then your ticket will be automatically valid for next year. You can obviously make changes because, as I'm sure you all know, you know, changing all the routing of the artists and the way their tours go, we've had to change, you know, some artists that were playing on Saturday to Friday, Thursday to Wednesday, or any other option possible. So people can have the option to basically change the day. And of course, they have the option to ask for their refund. And if they ask for a refund, basically the period is open. Well, the legal period in Spain is 14 days. So basically, we would have 14 days for people to request it. But we have decided because obviously we understand people need to see the whole lineup first, that we are personally going to extend this period till 1 week after we do the next announcement, which we still don't know when it will be, but it will be at some point. But at least we're giving people the option to do that, so that they can basically keep their tickets right now and keep them until they know they have the entire lineup.
Okay. Codruta, what was the refund situation with you? I guess for both festivals as well.
Yeah, in Romania, we negotiated with the Promoters Association, with the government, to introduce this voucher scheme. So practically, you were able to, if and whoever canceled, so the entire market didn't need to reimburse the money to the audience, which was 14 days. In a normal situation, you need to give the audience within 14 days the money. But this time they gave you the possibility to either opt for keeping the ticket that is valid automatically for next year, or for getting a voucher, which you can use either at the festival, either at buying merchandise at the same organizer, or if not used by September 2021, you need to reimburse it by the end of the year. We personally, especially for ARTmania, because we have a rock and metal audience, we decided, despite this situation, to not opt for it, and whoever wanted a reimbursement could opt for it for 30 days. And this period is over, and we had only 43 requests. So I think that our decision to trust our audience and to kind of be in a partnership with them, it really worked for us. But this definitely works for rock and metal audiences. I don't know so much for others.
So were you able to say to the government, look, this voucher scheme has been introduced in another territory? Were you able to use that to back you up?
Definitely, we have used all we got through Europe, through the European Festival Association, and we presented the documentation. And I think a very important decision for us was when this decision was voted in the Bundestag in Germany. Practically the same day, the Romanian government says, okay, if Germany, which is a very protective country for the customers, does this, then we clearly do it also. Okay. But it literally helped. It saved many of the organizers, because an immediate reimbursement to the entire audience would have bankrupted many companies.
Yeah. Stefan, you're a superhero. How did the voucher scheme help you?
Well, I mean, yeah, it helps, but in a nice way. The government also pretty early on then said, you know, keep the money of the people so that you don't go bankrupt, because we are not planning to give you any money anytime soon. I mean, that's also a way you can see it. I mean, it's really great help that they changed that law in the first place. Like the others said, normally we would have had, you know, to refund within 2 weeks. Now they kind of turned that around and say, you know, the normal way would be that people don't get their refund and hopefully swap their tickets into tickets for next year. And if they don't do that, then by the end of next year, we are supposed to give them the money back if we still can. But at the same time, yeah, the government also then says, you know, we are not planning to give you any money anytime soon, so please keep the money of your customers for now and see how you handle it.
Okay. And John, what was the situation with Isle of Wight?
I don't understand how you would bankrupt companies if you refund tickets. I mean, we said we were going to cancel. You have the choice to refund or keep the money or keep the ticket for next year, because we're definitely going to do a show. And we tried to make it positive by creating a virtual festival of the last 20 years, a TV show, a radio show. The weekend the show should have been on, and we announced our lineup, which is virtually the same for the following year. And actually, there's been an incredible response. We've sold over 35,000 tickets already. But I didn't understand that comment about refunds. If you refunded all the tickets, companies would go bankrupt. Who would go bankrupt?
Well, I guess it depends a little bit on the sizes of the company. In our case, for example, we have more than 100 employees, and we promote a lot of shows and festivals throughout the year, and we decided to keep our company running, work on next year. Of course,
So are you telling me you're spending the ticket money already?
Oh, I think Stefan.
Was I gone?
Relevant to the question, Gordon.
No, we so far are able to kind of spend our own money, but I guess what the government is intending with that law, with that new law, is like once you are at a point where you would have spent your money, then the next step is, you know, to touch the ticket money, which you hopefully don't have to, and then the next step would be that you get a credit from the government for very low interest, or maybe even without any interest, just in case you need to kind of wait longer until you have more income. So in our case,
I think it's really weird that, you know, we have a responsibility to an audience. If we're not going to put a show on, they must be able to get their money back if they want to. That's how I visualize it. And, you know, we're in shit street with costs. That's our problem. End of story. But some of these people were saying to me, well, we haven't got money to buy food. We need to live. We're losing our jobs. I think an audience have to be promised, or have to know in future, if there is no show, they can get their money back. Because there's a big debate in the UK where British Airways, instead of refunding people, are offering them vouchers, and everybody's going bonkers about it. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But for example, this is why we personally chose to do this with our event, to refund the money to the people who requested it, and the majority just kept it. But at the same time, I can understand that there were companies literally with the show built up, with the venues full, with the bands there, and the government says, starting 12 a.m., there won't be any show. That show was literally paid for. So I can understand they have real difficulties, and maybe not many of them were insured for something like this.
But that's the whole point of insurance, isn't it? You know, the pandemic was declared on January the 26th. And if you know you're going to have a show and you know you're going to put it on, you should have insured prior to that. And artists and everybody else should have insured their own costs. That's what force majeure is about. All bets are off. Any costs are mine and their costs are theirs. I find it strange. It seems to have discovered a complete black hole where people haven't acted what I would say professionally in terms of protecting the way forward. Does that make sense?
It makes sense from one point of view, but what do you do in the territories where the state never declared force majeure? Where the insurance will ask you, can I have the paper for force majeure? And you will not be able to provide.
Right.
Which is Spain, for instance, yes?
It's us, for example. Yes.
As far as
surely your local government, I don't know, the town council in Barcelona or whatever,
Madrid,
must at some point be able to tell you you can't have a mass gathering.
Actually, no. Actually, in Spain, as I said before, the rules have been changing week per week. So first week, everything was okay. 2 weeks later, maybe you couldn't go out to the streets. 1 month later, maybe you couldn't do massive events of, I don't know, 100,000 people. But all this was something that we would assume. Still, no one has come out and said, till like a month ago, no one came out and said, okay, you can only do events if people are 2 meters away from each other. So then I could have said,
you know where we all went wrong? We should have changed the name of it from being a festival to a protest. Exactly. I should have called it the Isle of Wight Festival Protest, and I could have had 50,000 people in a field all standing next to each other.
Which is exactly what's happening here. Like right now, we have strikes on the streets where you see 50,000 people complaining about the government letting us out and, you know, ending the confinement. Then we have mass gatherings in the parks because people are just going out, and you have like thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the beach, on everywhere. But for some reason, we have no idea what's happening with the concerts. And the only thing we know is that if we want to do an event, we have to have people 2 meters away from each other. And I insist, it was not till 1 month ago that our government really gave us strict measures regarding how the capacity of the venues should work. And going back to one thing you said before about refunding people, I think it's important that obviously the audience needs to feel safe about festivals, concerts, and know that they will get their refunds, their money back, sorry. But I think it's also important to think that that means that then the only people or the only gamers that will survive in the industry will be the big companies that can actually afford to get credits or afford to, you know, be in a big debt. So then what would happen with the small or medium-sized festivals or medium-sized events or whatever? I would like to know about that, like your opinion.
My point is, I don't think you should be spending the ticket money on costs. You should be fronting the costs yourself, because you must always be in a position to refund all of the money. That's the basic principle, isn't it? I mean, I've seen it happen lots of times when promoters have taken money from the future to pay the past, and it just becomes worse and worse and worse, and they end up bankrupt. There has to be a position whereby you have to front it and deal with it. That's, again, as I say, that's only my opinion. But I'll never forget when I had a ticket agency went bust in Scotland, and I had to essentially pay the cost myself because that was my responsibility. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't take ticket money and spend it without the show happening, I believe.
Of course. I mean, I totally agree with that, obviously. In fact, as I said before, is what we're doing. You know, everything we're going to do is actually put our own private money to save the festival. because we still don't have force majeure, which means that probably a lot of companies that we have paid advances to don't really have legal, how do you say, obligation to return the money.
Yeah.
So, this is a tricky situation, a fragile legal situation, as I said before. But of course, we need to face it. That's why we're here, and that's why we are business people, I guess.
You're getting some feedback on this online. So, I mean, fundamentally, then, does our business have an issue with cash flow? Then, John, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's become blatantly obvious that people haven't got some kind of war chest to go forwards. I mean, how can Cirque du Soleil become insolvent after 3 months of lockdown when they've coined it for the last 20 years? Does that mean all those people have taken the money out of the company? Or, you should always plan ahead for a disaster happening. And this is a disaster. And you have to be able to fund it from your back pocket to go forward to stay in business. And maybe this virus is going to teach a lot of people a lesson about how to run a business.
Stefan, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I was, maybe you got me wrong. I mean, it's a combination to help with the cash flow. Your own money, then the ticket money, and then credits from the state. These are the three escalations that the German government kind of, offer us to help to get over the time after we probably might have spent our own money. Us, and I think most of the other companies I know in Germany, at least as well, will be able to survive for a year. But what if it takes a little longer? Then I think few companies will be able to kind of spend their own money for longer than 6 months to 1 year.
I agree with that. I think we should all be capable of surviving a year, but 2 years, we should all go home and grow mushrooms on Dartmoor or something. The business will die completely. Sad but true.
So the help with the cash flow is helping, to get the customers their money back. And of course, that is the plan for everyone. But I think that law and that decision by the German government and also the clarity about it does help to kind of make our planning with the cash flow and have also enough time to apply for credits if needed. Of course, everyone should have all the times when you have used your own cash. Because, of course, in the moment, also the German government expects every big company to use all their own cash because we are not getting any free money in Germany. I know there's a lot of circulation about German government helps a lot, and that is true for artists and clubs and people who are really in trouble, and those companies and individuals and freelancers who are very close to, have to close their venues, then they get the help. And I have also confidence in the government that they would help festival promoters when the time is there. But so far, the festival promoters have to spend their own savings. That's very clear. Yeah.
So we're all basically saying our governments are shit and have never given us proper instruction. Right? But the other interesting thing is, remember the European Union that we were meant to, once upon a time we were in? Every country has acted individually. There's been nothing across the board. Do you not find that extraordinary? The disparity between, we've come down to Portugal, and I drove over the bridge to Spain the other day. There's nobody stopping you. Nobody cares. It's like all these rules, and nobody is implementing them. It's extraordinary. Really, really strange.
They saw the British number plate, John, and thought, here comes money.
I wish.
Talking of money.
Well, British people can come in now, just in case you all want to come on vacations.
Let's turn the conversation to what your conversations were about deposits getting repaid, fees for next year, and rescheduling for 2021. John, I'm going to start with you because you wear both hats. So, I mean, from an agent's point of view, what are the conversations you've been having with other festivals, and is it kind of mirroring what you're talking about to agents yourself?
Well, as the promoter of the Isle of Wight Festival, we got groups to give us back our deposits for this year, and we're doing contracts with them going forward for next year, and we will pay them a deposit. In terms of me being an agent, for example, Iggy Pop cancelling 20 festivals, when people come to me and say, we'd like to do him again next year, but we'd like 20% off the fee, I say, no, why should we do that? You know, the ticket price is going to be the same. If you don't think it's going to be successful, don't do the show. I would rather we didn't play than take a reduction on it. It depends. It's all about individual cases. You know, some promoters have taken the opportunity to cancel outright because they weren't selling tickets anyway. It's all individual, very individual.
But it's very, from your point of view, it's very much that you're not just booking the same bands for the next year on the same deal. It's a total renegotiation then.
Well, yes, sorry.
As an agent, I wouldn't do that. I won't book an act on a festival for next year unless they're going to pay me the same money.
But as a festival organizer?
But we've done the same thing.
Right,
and the groups, yeah. You know, I think there's one group that was incapable of making it. But I think you can't have one rule for one and one rule for the other. You have to act accordingly, surely. Haven't I got Iggy Pop on a show with you, Cindy?
You haven't got, sorry?
Have I got Iggy Pop on a show with you? I can't remember.
I don't think we had it last year. Last year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Great show, actually. Well, as always.
Does what John is saying, does that ring true for the rest of you when it comes to deposits, fees for next year, rescheduling?
My experience has been very positive with, I would say, almost every agent. I think it has been very easy to work with everyone during this period, and we have all tried somehow to support each other and to basically prevent this industry from collapsing even more. Obviously, some artists live in a very uncertain moment right now because they don't know if they will be able to travel or not or whatever. So it's been an easy process with agents and managements and artists, but at the same time, it's not been easy to reschedule completely. I don't know if this makes any sense. But yeah, I mean, regarding, I think in our business, Spain is a bit different because we live in a constant crisis. You know, we're not like the first world, like the UK or in general, the rest of the European countries. And this means that, you know, we just got out of a different crisis 1 year ago, and now we are again in another crisis. So people have no money. And unlike in the UK, where I think you have a wider or bigger sense of what the culture is and how important culture is for the society, in Spain, culture is a bit more, let's say, partying, a bit more like entertainment instead of culture, which means it's more a luxury. And therefore, next year, it will be very hard to get all the people that we normally get consuming tickets to do that. So for us, for example, it is important that all the agents and artists actually help us with with fees and everything possible to make it happen, because we are really, really running a big risk here with the festival next year.
Okay. Codruta, did you want to come in on any of that?
Yeah, we practically moved almost all bands for next year, and we just kept the same deal. So we didn't cut any fee, we didn't request, and for some of the acts where we had the deposits done, the money, when we rescheduled, we just left the money with the agency. But definitely for next year, we are not trying to pay less money for the new act, but we will definitely not pay more, because I expect the Romanian audience to have way less money than they would have had this year or in a normal situation, because it's a lot of unemployment, and as it looks now, a new wave of pandemic will hit Romania, and if everything will stop for another 1 or 2 months, the economy will be shattered. So I think that the priority won't be for people to go to festivals, but let's see. But we will also, if before in some particular cases we paid advances before 4 weeks before the festival, this time we will not pay any advance unless 4 weeks before the festival, no matter the act. We prefer not to book the act, especially if they are American acts. Because I want to normally see if they come, be able to come to Europe.
Okay. And Stefan, what have you done deposit-wise? Have you got the deposits back, or have you left them with the agencies?
We asked for the deposits back. I mean, as again, I mean, cash flow is definitely something we have to be mindful of, and so far everything, the understanding overall, I'm grateful that there wasn't big discussions within the industry. I think, you know, everyone's kind of in the same boat there, and there's a big mutual understanding. We did rebook a couple of artists for next year, but mainly we kind of rethink our festival summer next year. We are adjusting it. We have changed a couple of dates. We have adjusted a couple of concepts as well. So we used this last couple of months to kind of rethink the festival summer for next year, and basically start from scratch for next year for most of our events, not with all of them. But basically we said, yeah, let's have the deposits later next year. And but it's like John said, it's also a case-to-case decision. I understand if there are smaller acts, for example, who will need deposits earlier because they don't have the money to pre-finance their shows for next year, then we can discuss that. But generally, we should wait until we are more safe that everything goes forward.
Okay. This is kind of skipping forward a little bit, but Johanna has asked the question, what about the increase in sanitation costs that festivals will have to implement? Will that affect their overall costs? So it's something we'll get onto later, but I'll ask the question now because I'll have forgotten it by the time we get around to it. Is that something that any of you are thinking about so far? You know, we'll get on to your next festival in a minute, but are any of you already thinking, right, let's figure in these costs for the next festival? We can't do social distancing, but we have to do something. John?
Well, we know there's going to be a cost involved. It's the same when all the terrorism happened. We had to up our security and cover it. It's just another cost you have to swallow, because you're not going to be allowed to put on a gig unless you follow the government or the local council guidelines, and they're going to tell us that what certain things we're going to have to do. It's the one thing I have no interest in or belief in is the social distancing, because when you put a load of people in a field and they have a few pints, they're all going to get pissed together and they're not going to stand apart. So our festival will either happen if it's okay to happen, but I don't believe in this in-between bit. I don't see that as working, and I don't, driving gigs seem to be working to a certain extent, but you can't do that at a festival, can you? You can't put 50,000 cars.
I want to get rid of this pessimistic thing that I've been banging on about, but to do that, where do we all think that we are in terms of the recovery? Does anybody think we're near the start of the recovery? Do you think we're only at the start of the pandemic, or do you think we're in the middle? Does anybody think there's signs for optimism as yet? Cindy? Oh no, John, on you go.
No, go Cindy, ladies first.
No, come on. I like hearing you first, and then I can go over what you said.
So what we've got, just got delivered today, the new masks. We're selling masks. I forgot what the question was. What was the question?
Where do you think we are in terms of the pandemic? Start, middle, or end?
We just had lunch with a doctor, and she said, if there's going to be a second spike, it will be in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll then know where we stand, because we'll know we're screwed going forwards. The other option, I suppose, is in the cold weather, if it comes back, then it's going to be, I think we're going to have to learn to live with it. everyone's going to have to wear masks. We're going to have to do something where we can still combine together, but protect ourselves from it, because there's no vaccine on the horizon, to my knowledge.
Greg was saying before the panel that the government here are going to make some kind of announcement about events, outdoor events, some kind of timeline. Have you heard anything about that yet, John?
Yeah, it's to do with, first of all, to do with theatres, because what's his name? Andrew Lloyd Webber has said to the government, you know, if you can have all these people sitting together on an aeroplane, why can't they sit together in a theatre? It's a very logical thing. And the pressure has been put on the government by a combined bunch of people, the Concert Promoters Association, etc., which you know about. And we're waiting to see whether they're going to give us any timeline for what we can do next. But I find it hard to believe they're going to tell us any time before Christmas we can do a normal show. I would be stunned if they say that, because they don't want to get blamed.
Anybody else been given a timeline by the local authorities? Cindy? Oh, you're muted. Go for it again. You were muted, Cindy.
I don't understand why I keep on being muted. Life is telling me to shut up. I can tell you the unofficial, let's call it provisions. It's not the right word. Which is that the vaccine will come at some point next year, from June till September. So as John was saying, it's certain that this vaccine will exist, and actually, even if it does, it takes time for people, you know, to get it if they want to get it, etc, etc. So, well, basically, I would say that in Spain, okay, even though we are in a much better place right now, and we are a very optimistic society, like we're naturally happy and festive, we haven't even started the music business recover yet. Because, you know, to recover, you first have to know how our business works, how our business model works. We need to identify the problems, issues, and that our industry is having, and then offer solutions. And we haven't been offered any solution yet. We haven't been, we don't even know what the rules are going to be next year. So, I mean, I think we're doing our best to keep the wheel moving, because if we don't do it, no one will. But we still need to wait and see. I mean, at least you're getting 1.57 billion pounds in the UK, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been told the government are going to give 1.57 billion, but we don't know who they're going to give it to and how it's going to work. And I read this morning it's going to be grants and loans. It'll probably go to venues, not to agencies or anything like that. It's so wishy-washy. It's all very well, and we don't understand where the money's coming from, because if the money was there in the first place, why didn't we get it before? And then they can't just be printing it. It means our poor children are going to have to pay for it in taxes for the next 20 years, probably.
Yes.
And I believe there's no mention of the word festivals.
No, I don't think they even know what a festival is.
Yeah.
No.
Where was I? I've completely gone. So let's talk about next year's festival. I was going to get to Monica actually before I do that, because this is related. Monica's asked the question: are you going to reduce the capacity of the festivals next year? I'm thinking it's a decision you need to take in advance before the ticket sales, and that would be before government guidelines. Is that a consideration for anyone? No.
I don't believe that. You need social distancing. If the virus will still be active and it will still be a problem, if you have 5,000 people or if you have 10,000 people, that 5,000 people will stay together. I mean, they will have 1, 2, 3 beers, and then all the social distancing will be done. I think this type of measures can work up to maybe 500 to 1,000 capacity, but not to festivals. And what do? You're going to go to the restroom areas and practically disinfect everything after every visit of every person who goes there. It will be impossible to handle logistically. So I don't believe in reducing capacity, maybe with 10-20%, but not in big amount of numbers. And it doesn't make financial sense also to do it.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. You can't afford to do it. If you cut your capacity, you won't have the income and you won't be able to pay the increased costs. You know, we're all living on a gamble, really, aren't we? We're praying it's going to be all right, but none of us know it's going to be all right. We're making it up as we go along. People keep phoning me every day saying, what do you think is going to happen? And I say, well, I read the same news as you. I've got no clue. Somebody just wrote there that the US spike is on its way, and that's relevant to us all because a couple of my American artists are scared shitless about traveling. Really scared. They don't want to come out of their houses. They don't want to come to Europe. But I mean, we're in July now, right? We're talking a year away. That's a long time for things to happen in.
I was going to ask a related question later on, but I'll ask it now. So it's going to sound dreadful, but there are certain countries that are doing worse than others with the pandemic. With the US and the number of unemployed they've got there, could that, I mean, it's a horrible kind of way to look at it, but could that potentially help European festivals next year if their festival market is severely impacted by this? And you're saying
you think they're going to travel and come here to go to a festival?
If they need the money.
And if they will be allowed.
Oh, you mean the artists? I thought you meant the audience.
Yeah. Not the audience. No.
Most of them haven't got passports.
No, I mean the artists.
Yeah, I mean, if they've got problems there, then we're more likely to be better off. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, if they're still in trouble in 9 months' time, the world is in trouble big time. That's the way I see it. And
I just wanted to pick up on this for Codruta, because we said this before the panel. The government assistance for the arts in the UK, and I know there's been government assistance in Germany as well. Is that going to put Central and Eastern European countries, smaller markets, at a disadvantage, do you think? Well, Codruta, I'll come to you first, because it was a point you made.
Well, this is my biggest concern in a way. I don't know exactly how these grants function in Germany or in the UK, but when you hear about these big amounts, then you realize when you are in the East or Central Europe, because I talked also with Mikhail from Pohoda, where the support there is practically minimal or non-existing. And then you have the Eastern or Central festival market who picked up later and who managed to somehow grow stable and functioning events and sustainable. And if there won't be any support from the governments in this part, they will definitely be in a disadvantaged position compared to the West, if it's correct that the big money is there as it appears in the media. But I don't know, maybe like you know more about the funding for the concert promoters and festivals. But
I can't believe they're going to give any money to festival promoters. They think we make a fortune already. You know, I think they will give the money when it arrives to venues to keep venues afloat. That's the way I see it. Gordon, don't you think that's how it's going to work?
Yeah, it doesn't help when you drive your gold-plated car across the border into Spain, though. You know. No, I think the money will end up going mostly to ballet and opera companies and theatres and stuff.
The arts.
Yeah,
we are not the arts. Right?
No, we're not the arts. We're commercial.
We're just one of the best export businesses.
Yeah. There's an interesting question here from Danny Green, who's interested in the panel's thoughts on Melvin Ben's proposals requiring use of a trace app and taking a test to attend the festival. Would any of you ask your punters to prove that they didn't have the virus before they came? The best idea might be if there's a vaccine by this time, you vaccinate everybody as they come in, part of your ticket.
I mean, I think it's a fair point, because that's what they do right now. If you want to travel from Germany to specific countries, check into the hotels, I think you are asked a test. And if we don't have the vaccines, I think that might become a reality. But the condition would be that the government would cover the costs for the testings, for example, because right now I think it's 60 to 120 euros also in Germany to get tested. So I'm not sure if people would even do that. But right now they already have that, that you have to show a 48-hour-old test, or you could maybe think about testing express tents at festivals, which is hard to imagine, but it would be a way to get the population tested. And what I also start to think is, like in big cities like Berlin, you start to see the problems of, the kids and the people, they want to do something on the weekend. So Berlin, every weekend is like a festival in the moment. Like, the streets are dirty. It looks like after New Year's parties every Monday. And people just do their own parties in the parks and on the streets, etc. And, there could be a possibility for safe environments, to have regulated festival, professional, organized environments that even gets the people to get tested. That might be a thing, as long as we don't have a solution. And it's definitely something we start to logistically think about, as much as we think about, how can we improve the sanitary situations, etc. Some obvious things will be asked for, so we can prepare for that. But I think the testing idea is maybe one of the few realistic ones in the moment.
But how would you do it? Would it be at the gates, or would they have to go to their doctor a couple of days before?
They would have to go to.
Very good point. How do you test 50,000 people?
Yeah, I guess the condition would be free testing, so that the government covers the costs, which is so far in Germany not the case. But I guess it might become the case if they want to test people. If they come to the point that they want to check how many people had the virus, the festivals could help to get hundreds of thousands of people to get tested. So that is a maybe positive side effect, to find out how many people had the virus. But that could work in collaboration with the governments. If they like this idea, then they could maybe support us with that. But as far as I know, there's no firm feedback yet from any governments, but the suggestion has some positive ideas to it, I think, even though I'm not keen to get there. But it's hard to imagine for me as well that we can just do the festivals next year as we always did and nothing will change. I start to doubt that that's going to happen, but I will also not promote a festival with social distancing, that's for sure.
No, but you need a test that's immediate. You can't go to the doctor 2 days before and spend 2 days amongst other people and then turn up at the festival. What about that 2 days when you're possible? It cost me 60 quid to have a test, and I was really disappointed I hadn't had it, because I thought I had it. I had absolutely no antibodies whatsoever. But you need something which is immediate. And like you say, you've got 50,000 people queuing up at the gates. If someone tests positive when they get to the gate, what do you do with all the people they've been standing next to? I find it's just hard to imagine it being physically possible. And that thing of track and trace in the UK, where you're meant to phone up and say, I've got it, and you give a list of people that you've been in contact with. The best thing to do is just name 10 people you don't like, and they have to quarantine and go home for 10 days. That's a very dangerous principle.
So your next festival, sorry, Codruta.
I wanted to say that from what I see now in Romania is a reaction. I think many people will be even a bit hold back from wanting to test, because now it's more this idea that the government tries to coerce us into doing something, and it's this theory that it's not actually happening. So to move from the festival spirit to we get in only if we are tested, I think many will just say, I'm staying home. And also exactly what John was saying, the biggest problems, maybe it wouldn't be the event in itself, but when you let all these big masses of people to move and to queue at the entrances and to fill up trains going to that particular areas, that might be problematic. So what we discussed, for example, with the government, but it was just around April when they were still optimistic that something might happen this summer, but then they give it up. But we still want to keep it for next year through the Promoters Association. We started to make up a possible measures list with measurements like extra for this situation, and for the government to grant the festivals maybe like one particular amount per visitor for this type of costs, so they can support a little bit the events with taking over some of the extra hygiene costs that will organizing the event will impose. But we will see if the government will still have next year money to grant it.
So obviously, well, hopefully next year, when there are events again, touch wood, you must be considering things like consumer confidence, changing audience demographics. So are any of you starting to have conversations between your teams about raising ticket prices or raising food and beverage prices to try and
But if you're letting people keep their tickets from this year for next year, you can't up the ticket price even if you wanted to. And I think anybody increasing ticket prices is insane. We need to get an audience back first before you charge them more money. Let the, you know, but as I say, our festival has started off really well, and I'm genuinely pleased with the amount of support we've had. And looks like people are willing and want to go out. But as we keep coming back to, they will need the proof nearer the date that it's going to be safe to go. And that's what we're all worrying about and trying to predict, although we don't have the answer.
A wise man called Giddings once said to me that his business wasn't about selling tickets, it was about selling burgers and beers. That's where the money came from.
I think anybody on this call knows that you get money from food and drink, which helps support the cost of artists. That's a basic fact of business, isn't it?
So,
you know,
is that where you're going to claw back some of your money then?
What, from food and drink?
Yeah, by upping the price.
No, you can't up the price. That's people will just get pissed off and come back at you. Let's charge them the same and see how we get on. We can't charge them less because our costs are going to be higher, but we want to stay in business. We don't want to talk ourselves out of business. Okay. Let's be fair. How about that for a concept?
Cindy, I know, wanted to talk about sponsorship. Cindy?
Well, actually, before going to the sponsors, I actually agree with John. And this is exactly what we have done. You know, after like basically studying all the possible scenarios and having in mind the casuistry is enormous, the truth is that we need to not only respect the people that already bought tickets this year, but also to understand that, you know, there's a crisis, there's millions of people that have lost their jobs, they have less money, less income. So definitely, yeah, we need to not increase those prices to encourage people to continue here with us. That said, sponsors is another subject interesting because it's also a difficult relationship now because brands are afraid of investing in events that might be a cost of a possible spike afterwards, or that, you know, something might happen. So this is definitely affecting us.
Yeah, I mean, without most of them have said they want to stick with us for next year. A couple have dropped out because they're struggling as well. But I think when it becomes apparent the show is going to happen, sponsors will come in because there will be people who want to promote certain product to a certain demographic. And it's going to be the same again, really. Or I hope it is, because we all know we need some sponsorship to help pay the cost of the show. If you don't get that, then you're not going to break even, you're going to lose money. And if you lose money over a period of time, you're going to go out of business. So we're all hoping sponsors will come back, but it might be different kinds of sponsors relating somehow to the change of what's become the new normal. I don't know who those sponsors are, but
there's an obvious one.
Sorry?
There's an obvious one. Toilet tissue manufacturers. You need festivals.
I can't wait. I can't need any promotion. But the first thing when it all occurred, the one thing I never thought of was I need to stack up on toilet rolls. Of all the things I wanted in the world, that wasn't in the top 10. To stay in lockdown for 3 months. That's the weirdest thing ever, the toilet roll scenario.
Stefan, in Germany, have you had conversations with sponsors about next year?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are also in a waiting pattern, but I think there's also maybe a hope that once everything moves forward, they will, start spending money again. But in the moment, there's again some unclarity. I mean, in general, most of the things we're discussing, everything is speculation, and I think we all had two options: either we go ourselves into lockdown and wait until we have clarity and just take a long break from our exhausting jobs. But I think most of the people have decided to work on next year, hoping it will happen, and then take it one day at a time and see how can we react to the adjusted realities. And that's basically with everything we discuss what we are doing right now. At first, we tried to move the dates from June to August. That didn't happen. Then we started to book next year's festival season. Now we start swapping tickets, selling tickets, talking to sponsors, booking artists. And once we have to change that again, we will have to change that again. I guess that's the new normal. We just have to be very flexible. We have to try to keep our running costs low and as low as possible. And hopefully most of the also smaller businesses can somehow afford to get through this year and hopefully, keep back running next year. And I'm grateful to see that there are lots of international talks between festival promoters, associations, health and safety. I think all of these questions we have right now, the good news is there are lots of really competent people sitting together, exchanging ideas, and everyone will share their ideas and knowledges. And I think that's a positive thing that shows in the industry right now. No one's kind of completely left alone. We are all in the same boat, and it's played by ear.
Codruta, is that the same, Romania?
Well, I have to say I had very pleasant surprises with the partners. Maybe because we are also one of the oldest festivals, we would have celebrated 15 years this year. We will do it next year, hopefully. And it was really pleasant surprise that our main sponsor, despite the fact that they clearly knew the event was not going to happen because it was already cancelled, they gave us a call and said, we had a discussion at the management level, and we decided to practically pay already the entire fees despite for this year, for next year, because we know you cancelled everything, and we realized that there are particular promoters which we want to be sure they will stay on the market. So that was really a wow surprise. But despite the traditional ones, I think it will be very difficult to get new ones, especially if the situation will be uncertain by January, February. Because this would be a question that I would have for the others, because I'm really interested what they think. When do you feel that it's the month when the situation needs to be calm and clear for the festival season 21 to actually happen? Is it January? Is it March? Is it April? Or like?
I think it's March. Our show's in June. We need to know by March whether we have a show or not, because you need to give people time and warning that it's not going to happen. I'm praying that by Christmas there's some direction. But I would say the cutoff period would be March. What does everybody else think?
Oh, Cindy, you're muted.
I'm really sorry. I just can't handle this. Yeah. I would say, for us between March and May, we should definitely have an idea of what we're going to do.
On a related question then.
Or we can.
When do you take out your insurance policy then, John?
Well, it's irrelevant now because you can't cover the pandemic, so you're fucked one way or the other. You take it out a day before now. It won't make much difference because you won't get paid on it. If it's cancelled because of the virus, no one will have coverage. I suppose some bright insurance company will say, there's an insurance premium of X £100,000, but nobody can afford to pay that realistically, can they?
And the other thing I was going to ask you, just on consumer confidence, I've read a few things where people have said, obviously the younger fans who think they're immune to this, and I can see why they think that, they might come back to your events, but older fans won't, so your demographics might change. Is that, if that's true, is that going to affect any of your booking policies? Are you going to be looking at younger, potentially cheaper acts, younger acts for that audience? Anyone?
Well, we just have a mixture of past, present, and future, so we wouldn't change the policy. I think we program it so you don't have 10 bands the same, 10 indie bands on the main stage all day long. What you need to do is get people to move around the site and buy those hot dogs and beers that you were talking about. And you have a pop group in the big top while there's a rock band on the main stage and vice versa. You mix and match it. So I don't see any reason to change the policy of what we get. As long as you book groups that can perform in an open air arena and deliver, and they've had some form of success. It's just the worst thing is when they come and play the whole of their new album. That's the biggest disaster waiting for you. I remember Jim Kerr in Simple Minds, who said they got so cocky that they opened a show in Australia on the day their new album was released, played the whole of the album and walked off to the sound of their own feet. People want to hear the songs on a record they bought.
We're running out of time. Oh, one of the other things I was going to ask you, though, just on the makeup of your festivals. So I've also been reading things that when people are asked, or when they investigate where people caught the virus, the percentage of people who got it at an outdoors event or caught it outdoors is minuscule, like almost zero. If that was the case, would you reconfigure your festival so that every stage was outdoors? Anyone?
We've only got one indoor one anyway, and it's all the sides are up. It's virtually, yeah, maybe. If that's a proven fact, worth a shot, isn't it? If it means you're going to have a festival as opposed to not having a festival, it's better to do something and adhere to it.
Yeah. Anyway, just a thought. We are running out of time, sorry. But I just wanted to, my gloom and doom attitude, as I am, but I wanted to ask everybody just to wrap up by maybe talking about one of the main things you've learned through this experience, either good or bad, hopefully good. I don't know if that's communications or just your faith in other people in the industry, if it's grown, just anything. Cindy, do you want to start? Anything you've learned that's good or bad through this experience?
Well, for me, this experience, I think, has been actually quite positive at a human level. I think I've discovered that people have feelings, agents have feelings. I think, I like learning, and I like that life sometimes puts us in this kind of situation, so we reinvent ourselves. I think it's going to be good in a midterm to start thinking more about or at least be more aware of everything around us and how anything can affect us, and therefore improve our business in the best way possible. So I'm happy about it, and I'm happy about the rest of the people kind of supporting each other and talking. As someone mentioned before, that it was amazing that festivals don't speak at a European level. And I think, maybe this has actually united us a bit more. We have now new associations, at least here in Spain, of festivals that we didn't have before. I'm in touch with other festivals in Europe. we're sharing ways to help each other. So I think that's positive, and I like that.
Good. Stefan, something positive or anything you've learned through this experience?
To take it a day at a time, and also use some time for some things there wasn't time for in the past. Also some topics regarding diversity, anti-racism, thinking about how can we change the business and our lives for the better.
Cool.
That's
Codruta?
Well, I think that the biggest lesson that I've learned is that having a more sustainable business model, that I have witnessed so many times in this industry when festivals, especially smaller promoters, they want to grow big very fast, and then they just increase their festival capacity or their show production capacities, and then they start to roll the debt from one year to the other. And I see the damages that it creates when a crisis hits. So I'm pretty lucky that we personally, with ARTmania, learned something from the financial crisis in 2008. So it's a business model that we will keep having a healthy business, not always counting that it will be good forever.
Great. And John, I'm giving you the final word.
I think it's great to see that all the agents have teamed together to petition the government. We're all competitors, we're all fighting each other all the time. The Concert Promoters Association, the agents have all come together, and it means in future there's probably going to be one body representing the live music industry with the government, which I think is a fantastic news for the future.
Great. Anybody who's watching, if you press like on whatever you're watching on, you'll get future alerts as to when we're doing more IQ focused sessions. But it's just down to me to thank you all for giving your time today. I hope I'll see you all soon, and I hope I'll see you all next year in a field somewhere.
Thanks, Gordon. Take care. Cheers.
Everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.